Good morning and welcome. I think what we will do, we'll just wait a moment for anyone else to join the meeting and then we will get going. The numbers are trickling up on this morning. Okay, I think let's get started because we've got quite a lot to cover. So, hello everyone and welcome. I'm Renee Cantor. I've been a part of Business Surrey since it launched last year, and I'm now an enterprise mentor advising businesses across Surrey to find the support they need to thrive. And I'm going to be your host for this event. So thank you for joining us online. Just before we start, I just want to go through some housekeeping with you. If we have any technical issues during the webinar, hopefully not, we'll do our best to fix them straight away. We've turned off the screens and the audio of all of our attendees during the session, but you are going to have an opportunity to ask questions via the Q&A function. Just to let you know that we're recording this event, so if you want to rewatch or share the session with colleagues, we're going to make it available as soon as possible after the event. Next slide, please. Thank you. So who are you going to meet today? Well, I'm really pleased to be joined by Tim Oliver, the leader of Surrey County Council, and Nicola Kilvington, who's the Director of Devolution and Local Government Reorganisation, or LGR, at Surrey County Council. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now, and this is what we're going to focus on. Tim's going to begin our session providing an overview of devolution and local government reorganisation, what that means for Surrey and the impact on your business. I'll then ask Nicola to talk through Surrey County Council's proposal and the drive to unlock further devolution to Surrey. Tim is then going to briefly outline the government consultation that is currently live. We'll then have time for your questions via a Q&A session. We do have to end at 12:30 today, but if we run out of time and haven't covered everything, then don't worry. We'll include all the questions and answers on the FAQ pages of the Surrey County Council website. So I think we're ready. So let's get going. If we can have the next slide, please, and I will hand over to Tim.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Renee, and good morning, everybody. And thank you for joining us this morning. So yes, we're going to sort of hopefully give you a bit more detail around what devolution and LGR means in Surrey. I apologise if we will try not to use jargonized language, but I think for those of us that kind of live and breathe this, it's difficult to kind of avoid that sometimes. But this all started really back in December last year when the government issued a white paper on English devolution, with the clear intention of devolving more powers and responsibility, and I think money down to local areas. And to achieve that, what they wanted to do was to and do intend to create mayoral footprints across the whole of the country. Obviously, people will be familiar with the Mayor of Greater Manchester and the Mayor of the West Midlands and so on. But over the years, there's been quite a mixture of different structures, whether those are bringing together local councils into a sort of combined authority model or otherwise. So part of what is now called the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Act is to standardise that structure. So ultimately, and in theory, the government said by 2029, we will have a mayor for the whole of a mayor for the whole of the country, covering the whole of the country, and then also unitary councils, as they've called them. And those will then be the sort of the two main tiers of local government. And what that means for Surrey is that there needs to be reorganisation, because at the moment we have the Surrey County Council, and the council's responsible. We're responsible for adult social care, children's services, maintenance of highways, economic development, and so on. And then we have 11 district and boroughs, and those support the other services, waste collection, planning, and so on. And Nicola, I think, will go into a little bit more detail around what that looks like. But those 12 councils, as part of the reorganisation, will disappear in 27. I'll come on to the timetable, but they'll disappear in April 2027, and will be replaced with 2 or 3 unitary councils. And that is really where the discussion that we're having with the government at the moment, the consultation, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But the plan really is to bring services and money and focus down to a much more granular level. There's all sorts of moving parts to this, so not least of all how that works with our sort of statutory partners, with the police, the fire service, the health system, and indeed the voluntary sector and so on. And again, we'll pick that up a little bit later in the conversation. But I think if we I'll just sort of just touch briefly on the mayors, because what will happen is that there will be created a mayoral combined authority. So there'll be a mayor of Surrey, and then there'll be the 2 or 3 unitaries underneath that will create this sort of combined authority model. And the mayor will have strategic powers. As the slides show, that will include responsibility for skills, which currently really sits with the county council, for growing the economy, and a lot of what this government is focused on is economic growth around strategic transport, but that won't include railways at the moment, and just generally growth. And the unitary councils will have the main responsibility for then delivering those services. There is a kind of healthy conversation going on across the system in terms of what the mayor should, what powers they should have, and how they can use those powers, as opposed to the unitary councils, and kind of who has the final say on things. But that's for sort of future negotiation and discussion. But what we hope will come out of this is sort of a simplification of the system, so that residents will know which council, that there will be one council that they need to contact if they want to talk about education or social care or waste collection and so on. And it will be standardized across the country. Obviously, the government expectation is that it will reduce the costs, and that those savings can then be recycled back into frontline services. So the theory makes sense. The practicalities are challenging. And if you just like to move on to the next slide. In February 25, we were selected in Surrey to go on the fast track. We have to reorganise our 12 councils into a more limited number of unitary councils, because that's the model that the government have set out, and that's the process that we're in. We submitted with the other 11 district and borough councils an interim proposal in March 2025, which the government looked at, and then a final proposal in May 2025. And there were 2 proposals that went in, one for 2 unitaries, one in the east, one in the west, and another one with 3 unitaries, which effectively created a unitary in the north of the county. The government gave us some feedback on, there were 3 proposals originally. One included Reigate and Banstead and Crawley, but the government didn't go with that for various reasons, some technical, others because it crossed boundaries. So they're only consulting on the 2, and I'll just touch a little bit on the consultation later on, and then we will get a decision in the autumn, probably mid-October, in terms of which model the government prefer, whether it's 2 unitaries or 3 unitaries. And then we move through into elections to those new unitary councils next May. There's a slightly odd sort of process in that the existing councils, the 12 councils, will continue as sovereign bodies through to April 2027. And there'll be that transition year. So you'll have the 2 or the 3 new unitary councils sitting alongside the existing councils, and there'll be a kind of joint committees and a negotiation over kind of how the services are split up and the assets are split up and so on. And then those unitary councils will take over in April 2027, and we're expecting there to be an election for a mayor, directly elected mayor in May 2027, and that what powers the mayor has and what funding comes with the mayor will be part of a separate negotiation with the government. So that's sort of hopefully relatively straightforward in terms of moving to that mayoral model with unitary councils. But there's a lot of detail that sits underneath that. So I'll hand over to Nicola now, who will put a little bit more flesh on the bones.
Thank you very much, Tim. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see many of you here. So yes, Nicola Kilvington, I've been coordinating the County Council's work on devolution and local government reorganisation and led the business case process for the 2 unitary proposal that Tim just mentioned. So when we developed that proposal, we looked at many factors. We looked at demand for our services. We looked at anticipated income for the council, house building targets, business activity, lots of other data and insight. And we obviously compared that to the kind of financial outlook as well. We then looked through a number of different options. So for reasons that you've heard already, a single county unitary would not have unlocked devolution, so we couldn't consider that. And we also assessed our options against the government's criteria, and that concluded that the best outcome we believe for Surrey is to move to 2 unitary councils, west and east, replacing the current 12 councils. I think from an economic perspective, our analysis showed that this would provide some balance across those 2 areas with a potential equal split around assets and sector strengths. Obviously, there's access to airports for each of those as well. They're both going to retain direct access into London. And we hope that will mean that they're really well placed to drive growth and deliver future benefits, obviously working as well collaboratively with the mayor and strategic authority there. If we could move on to the next slide. So in terms of some of the benefits, so we have published quite a lengthy business case, which is on our website, but kind of in essence, we've got 3 elements really to what we're saying are the benefits it brings. So in terms of finances, our analysis shows that moving to 2 unitaries would in the long term save money, therefore offering better value for taxpayers and also putting the new councils hopefully in a more sustainable financial situation which would support service delivery. And our analysis of the 3 unitary proposal that's been put forward by other councils in Surrey would show that that would actually cost money in the long term. And if you're interested in seeing the kind of rationale and assumptions behind that, then we can share that with you. We believe that 2 unitaries will simplify services. So thinking about our customers and businesses and residents who expect there to be a kind of smooth journey through accessing services, having 2 unitaries would have fewer points of contact, less confusion, and would hopefully bring a greater coherence in terms of where and what people want to access. I'll also say a bit more later about how we believe that the 2 unitary model, particularly with our new approach to community engagement that we're calling neighbourhood area committees, will strengthen community engagement and empowerment and really build on the local areas, so the towns and villages that people recognise. We know people, they tell us they don't really recognise administrative boundaries, and it's actually the towns and villages. And I'll say a bit more about the approach that we're beginning to pilot now whilst we await the government decision. So we went through lots of engagement as we developed our proposals. It's endorsed by Elmbridge Borough Council and Mole Valley District Council, and many of our partners also came out publicly to support We received letters of support from police, from health, from fire, and also business and community leaders. And I think that really shows that people can see the coherence to the argument around two unitaries, and particularly in the public sector, that potential for public sector reform as you bring in that kind of co-terminosity around boundaries between partners. If we move on to the next slide, I'll say a little bit more about devolution. So Tim has mentioned the government sort of direction on this, so really clear expectation that areas will have a mayor. They've then expect them to work with the unitary councils. They're calling them going forward strategic authorities. They're currently known in other areas as combined authorities. And that will hopefully bring the benefits both in terms of funding and powers, and also a convening power as well. And government are also clear that the mayors will have quite a high profile and access into senior ministers in government alongside council leaders as well in some positions. So really hopefully bringing some benefits of that profile into the area. The areas for devolved powers are sort of on a high level up there on the slide. We would expect there to be some further detail that's coming through government, and we want to work with partners to sort of see what that transition to a mayoral strategic authority would look like, so that we can not lose momentum around some of the great initiatives that are already happening in some of these spaces. We are conscious, I guess, of the sort of kind of wider public sector funding situation, but we would hope that, as government have indicated in other areas, that there would be devolved funding building on some of those initial work streams. And we can already see some of the benefits. So the devolution that was secured previously in Surrey in the form of a county deal, which was under the previous government, has enabled us to, for example, build out some support via growth hubs to look at skills boot camps, and also employment support programs. So there's lots of strengths we know already in Surrey that we hope devolution can further enhance. So the next slide, I'm just going to briefly talk a bit about community engagement. So we know that there can be a perception that larger councils might be a bit removed from communities, although we don't believe that is the case, given the county council covers the whole of Surrey and works really effectively with communities. But we want to ensure and really hardwire into the new unitaries where we can a new and strengthened community engagement model. So we're calling that neighbourhood area committees, and we're piloting in 3 areas. So one is in the Tandridge area, one is in the Elmbridge area, and one is in the Mole Valley area. And we are starting this month with the kick-off workshops with a view to those committees starting up from September onwards, and we're putting in an evaluation framework that will see how this is working in those 3 areas with the view to informing a blueprint really for the future. They will bring together elected representatives across county, district or borough and town or parish councils where they exist, alongside public sector partners, voluntary sector partners, community groups, and we would very much welcome business reps in that space as well. So please, if you're interested in getting connected into this, do contact us via the email that's up on the screen. We anticipate those areas kind of bringing together action plans, quite focused sort of mission-based action plans that will be insight informed, that will build on wider engagement with residents and community groups, and look at how they can add emphasis or intervene in very specific kind of issues to those areas, really harnessing the benefits of all those partners coming together. So we will be able to share more with you about how those pilots are going, and very much welcome your support in those areas if you would like to get in touch. So I'll hand back to Tim now. He'll just finish a bit more about the government consultation.
Yeah, thank you, Nicola. So the consultation is live, and as you'll see there, it runs until Thursday, the 5th of August, 2025. I have to say it's not particularly user-friendly. There's some quite technical questions, which I suspect many people that aren't that close to this whole process will not quite, sort of, or may struggle a little bit to kind of understand. But the core principle that they're trying to establish is whether people think that the proposals are sensible, and that in general terms, but also it would be helpful if people were able to indicate whether they thought the justification or the reasoning behind 3 unitaries is more credible than two, or the other way round, and so on. The government aren't actually technically obliged to consult with the public. They are statutory partners that have to be consulted, and there's a list of those that they've published. But they do absolutely encourage anybody that is living, working, operating in Surrey to have a look at the consultation and to respond. They've had a few thousand responses already, I gather, from the government. So we would encourage you to do that. It's at the end of the day, realistically, this is a government piece of legislation. The bill has been laid in Parliament. This will happen, and one of the reasons for wanting to be in the first wave was so that we had some degree of control over what this looked like in Surrey. And as Nicola has said, we've had extensive engagement in the run-up to this stage of the consultation and in the preparation of the business plans. But I mean, Surrey is a fantastic place, as we all know, to live in, to work in, to study in. We've got three brilliant universities here, and of course, as we've a really strong economy. The businesses contribute over 50 billion a year to the exchequer. We're in the top 2 or 3 in the country in terms of that contribution. A significant proportion of SMEs, but also a number of large businesses with their headquarters here. And we've got the sort of, the strengths in various sectors, automotive, cyber, gaming, financial services. We are an absolute engine in this county for the country. And if we can't grow our economy and make it really strong and sustainable, then it's going to be difficult for other parts of the country as well. So we've got to get this right. Local government is, of course, it's one aspect of life here, and there needs to be an increased focus generally, both from the local government, from the health system, and from everybody around preventative activity. We are seeing a decrease in life expectancy, and particularly a decrease in healthy life expectancy. And we know that people that are in employment have generally healthier lives. So all of this is interconnected. Surrey County Council's been in existence, I think, since 1890 or something, and kind of understands how to deliver its services, particularly focused on adult social care and children's social care, and that's why we're very clear that how we believe that the safest way to split up the county on the basis of that is what we're going to have to do. It's essential that we match the council tax base with the cost of delivering the services. We know that from the spending review and indeed from a funding review of the whole of local government that the government is consulting on, Surrey will be a net loser in terms of government subsidy, and an expectation that we will optimise our council tax base. So that does mean almost certainly that we will see council tax rising, I'm afraid, kind of year on year. But at the end of the day, we've just got to make sure that we can afford to deliver the services and improve those services as we move forward. And I think the more you dice and slice the services, the greater the cost will be, and the greater the risk that things will fall through the middle. I think just in my last sort of comment on this, really, which is, just bear in mind that the new structure will see economic development and responsibility for the Adult Skills Fund and those sorts of things, and the responsibilities of the local enterprise partnerships that the county currently holds will move to the mayor and to the mayoral strategic authority. And the work we're doing now in all aspects of what we're doing together with the district and boroughs is to make sure that transition is as smooth as possible. We are, I think, collectively, we've done a good job in engaging business and doing whatever we can as a local government authority to help support the growth in businesses. We've got the challenges around our high streets, and we also have a specific challenge here in Surrey around a skill shortage, partly, I think, driven by the cost of housing, which is something that is not within our control, but actually encouraging more people to go down the apprenticeship route and to really kind of fill that skills gap is a key focus for all of the economic development teams across the county. So I would encourage you, if you can, to at least have a look at that consultation, even if you don't fill in all of the questions. There's a bit of free text, so you can just sort of give your views. But it would be helpful for us and for the government to just get a sense of whether you think this is the right direction of travel. And indeed, obviously, we'll have a little conversation, I imagine, about the specific things that may impact on businesses. But you'll see there that you either go on the Surrey County Council website or one of the district and boroughs, or indeed the government website, and you can find a lot of information, background information, as well as the consultation itself. So I think, Renee, I think that takes us probably to the Q&A.
It does. Thank you, Tim. And just to let people know that we are going to be putting some links to in the Q&A for all of those signposted points that Nicola and Tim have shared with us. And we will also share that after the session as well in an email. So thank you to Tim and Nicola. It's now time for us to answer any questions that you have. Some questions have been submitted in advance of the event. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at those now, and then what I'll do is I'll keep an eye on the Q&A function to see if there are any live questions. So please do keep posting your questions during the session. If we don't get through them all, we will add them to the FAQ page on the Surrey County Council website along with the answers. So let's have a look at the ones that we've already got. Tim, I wonder if we'll start with you, please. One of the questions that we had was about the debt held by some of the Surrey councils and how potentially that's going to be resolved within the new structure.
Yeah, so that is an elephant in the room, without question, and the debt that sits in Woking Borough Council is in the public domain, and that has been our focus in the conversations with the government. They recognise that the level of debt is such that it would be unfair for either the residents of Woking or indeed the wider residents of Surrey to pick up that responsibility. Woking do have government appointed commissioners there, and they are in the process of realising assets wherever possible and using the proceeds of that to pay down the debt. We have agreed with the government at this stage that there will be financial support next 26-27, which will probably hopefully be along the same lines as last year, which was broadly 170 million, I think, which went towards interest payments and so on. So we haven't reached a final position, but we have got good engagement with both the Ministry of Housing and Local Government and more particularly the Treasury, who of course are kind of in control of these things. So I'm reasonably confident that we will get to a good position around the debt in Woking for next year, but for the longer term as well. The rest of the debt that sits in other districts and boroughs in particular, I should say there is good debt and bad debt. I mean, good debt is where that money has been spent, in our case, on building children's homes investing in accommodation for people to live independently longer, building specialist schools for children with additional needs, and so on. The bad debt, I think, that is or what people see as bad debt is that was invested in commercial investments that have gone sour or potentially could go sour. So that is what we're doing at the moment as 12 councils, is looking at the levels of debt, what is at risk, the cost of servicing that debt, and of course also then looking at the asset base across all councils with a view, I suspect, to dispose of operational assets at some point. But it's a challenging issue, and the government recognise that whatever deal they do with Surrey will also apply to other councils in similar situations. Although Woking State is I think the largest of any council in the country. So we're very clear that this is a government problem. And that the government are going to have to sort it out, and that's the flavour of the conversations that we're having.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tim. There's been quite a few questions about business rates as well. I'm wondering, post the LGR, how that's going to be organised, who a business is going to pay and if there are going to be any increases. I don't know which one of you would like to answer that.
I can take that one. So I think we know that obviously increasing rates can be a challenge that businesses have faced over the years. They're currently collected by district and borough councils on behalf of the government. About half of that then stays locally and the rest goes into central government and is redistributed across the country. So once we've gone through local government reorganisation, responsibility for collecting rates will move to the relevant unitary authority. So if that's a 2 configuration, it depends whether you're in the east or the west, or 3 if that's the case. And those changes will be fully communicated to people when things are clearer. In terms of the future level and also any levels around business rate relief, that would be set by national government, and we know that all of this is being looked at by government at the moment as well. So we do anticipate things becoming clearer, and we'll keep people posted so that they have that clarity at the right time.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nicola. We've got a couple of questions in the Q&A, so I think I'll cover those next. So Joanna asks about the split, so the split into 2 unitaries and how that decision was made. So this probably is for you, Nicola. So Joanna says that there's a population difference of 20% between the east and west, which seems a bit too large, and about how the location of Spelthorne, it's quite closely connected to London. It's similar to Elmbridge, Epsom and Reigate. So why is it grouped with the east rather than the west?
So a key factor in the analysis we looked at is the future new council's ability to maintain and support the anticipated demand, particularly in social care services, which is a predominant factor in the budgets for any councils going forward. And the split that we have proposed means that there will be an equitable kind of split of that, and those councils would be set up well. We did take into account other factors as well. There's actually quite a lengthy appendix that goes into some of this detail, but really some of the movements that were indicated in the question that was asked, they wouldn't really have made much of any difference to some of those big indicators around sustainability of the future. So taking all of that in the round and looking at particularly public sector reform potential with our partners. So we know that the police and health are very keen to work with us in delivery footprints, and that they would mirror those delivery footprints going forward. So that was also a key driver for us, and the 2 unitary split that we've set out works for them. So they're really the main drivers.
Thank you. I'm just going to move on to a question from Anne, who says she's trying to understand the financial benefits of local government reorganisation, and I feel that if we're in the millions it makes little difference, but I do feel in terms of local abilities of individuals to be heard, it's stretched even further with only 2 authorities. And her question is how do you see Guildford and Waverley to be fully heard? And Tandridge might also feel the same way, being outside of the 3 proposed forums instead of the 2.
So on the finances, although, so Tim, did you want to come in?
No, you go first. They're gone.
I was just, so I mean, I'll say a bit and then do come in. So I was just saying on the finances. So whilst we're talking about, I think after 5 or so years, seven or so years, that the savings for 2 unitaries would be 23 million per year. The cost for 3 unitaries would be around 16 million per year. So yeah, they're small in comparison to budgets, but they're not insignificant given the ever kind of squeeze on public sector budgets. And as Tim set out earlier, the government direction of travel will see Surrey having that squeezed even further. So we don't want to kind of overlook those potential to make savings. I don't know, Tim, whether you want to come in a bit more then off the back of that.
Well, yeah, just we're going to see less funding from the government, so we need to find any possible way of saving money. This is it's a government initiative. I mean, we have no choice but to go down this road, and therefore whatever we put in place has to be the most efficient and cost effective as we can do. But I think just in terms of the sort of the local point, obviously we've got 3 and hopefully 4 pilot schemes being set up around these neighbourhood area committees, but the plan is to have between 25 of those across the county. So those will build on the work that we've been doing already with the health system and other partners around towns and villages, and ideally these will sort of be 50,000 footprints which people can identify with, and so that is where people are going to get that local engagement and feel that local representation and have that local voice. And those have to be multidisciplinary. As I said earlier, we've got to have all of the other statutory partners in the room, because those are the organisations that do make a difference to people's lives and their livelihoods. So at the moment, it's I don't think realistically, and I certainly wouldn't argue that 3 unitaries of 400,000 is any more local than a unitary of 550,000. The neighbourhood area committees, or whatever they ultimately are called, is absolutely key to the success of people feeling that that there is that real local engagement for not just for local government services, but for other services as well. So that's why we're running these pilots. They'll be up and running within the next few weeks, and we hope to get those rolled out across the rest of the county as soon as possible. It will be for the new unitaries to decide whether to go with that or not. But again, there will be a requirement in the Act to have some sort of forum like that. So I think that will address the localism point rather than the sort of 2 or 3 unitary point.
Brilliant. Thank you both. Karen's asked a question saying, as a small business operating in Surrey, her customer base is schools and colleges. Is there going to be a central procurement or a supplier list that will be in place? And will it restrict schools from buying for SMEs that are not on the list?
So I think it's probably a level of detail that we're yet to get into, but the anticipation, I guess a principle that we want to hold throughout this process is limited disruption to partners, residents, businesses. Like, we want to ensure that whilst there's going to be some upheaval as we go through this, that ultimately it will be positive. So I think principles around making information accessible, whether that's through procurement things. I can't comment on the specific list, but we would hope that we would make it as easy as possible for our partners to continue working with us and to deliver whilst we go through this change.
Okay, thank you.
And of course, the county council does have a current procurement policy of looking to procure locally at least 50% of contracts with local businesses. So I would hope that would continue into the new unitaries as well.
Okay, brilliant. We've got a couple of questions about the whole cost of LGR and sort of the integration costs. And Nicola asks, has the government funded Surrey County Council and the districts and boroughs to undertake this devolution pre-work, or is the cost being absorbed by existing budgets? If it's the latter, how will this impact funding allocated to council commission services for 2026 and 2027?
You want to
I'll go
take
first.
it?
Yeah, so we received £380,000 from the government, which has been split across the councils, and that was intended to fund us to this stage, to the submission of the final plans, and the rest of the consultation. So I don't think any council has incurred any loss so far. The bigger issue is then the cost of the reorganisation itself, and that will inevitably run into tens of millions. We are in a discussion with the government around the funding of that, but I suspect that, which has been the case with others that have gone through this process, that there's an expectation that councils will use a proportion of their reserves to fund it, if I'm honest. So there will be a cost, an upfront cost to the councils, and then ultimately a saving at the end of it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tim. And then we've got a question for Christine about the bids, which are the business improvement districts, which I think there are about 11 or 12 across the county at the moment. And she's asking whether they will still be supported and whether levy payments will need to be standardised.
So again, I think we might have to take that away actually and come back on that specific question, because I don't think I can answer it now, but the principle, as I outlined earlier, would still hold about not wanting there to be too much disruption, wanting to ensure that services and initiatives are delivered where they can. We'll obviously have to look at what would fall within the mayor's remit and at what point things might need to transition there if that's the case. But we should probably take that away, Renee, and we can come back, and when we publish the FAQs, I can be a bit more specific.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nicola. I've got one more question from Omar, who is someone who regularly supports organisations in developing green book aligned business cases. He is keen to understand how the options for LGR in Surrey have been assessed. So specifically, what framework has guided the definition of those options, and whether their socio-economic and environmental impact has been forecast or measured?
So yes, is the answer, and we can signpost to all the analysis that we did. So in essence, we looked at the government criteria. So government were very clear that proposals need to meet certain elements. So we took those. We also looked at some of our own criteria. So we wanted obviously to work within the county boundaries of Surrey. We wanted to use the existing building blocks of the electoral divisions. They've been recently assessed by government, so they would be very useful to build the new authorities around. We've looked at many other data points as well, and that we can, as I said, set out in more detail in the appendix some of the data that we've used for that.
Brilliant, thank you. One of our questions that was put to us before the meeting was about highways and infrastructure, and Tim, the questioner, was asking about how is LGR going to help improve our congested road network in Surrey?
Well, a good question. I wish I could say that it will. I mean, the challenge we have in Surrey is that we have 60% more traffic volume than anywhere else in the country, and that's largely people going into and out of London. And we only get the same level of funding, so the equivalent of £1 per mile that other places in the country get, despite the fact that we've got much heavier usage. The government are looking at that funding formula, but our problem is that 85% of the interventions in our roads are utility companies, and we have nearly 200 interventions every day, and they have at the moment. Utility company has the power to go onto our roads without the need for obtaining a permit if the works are classified as an emergency. I'm afraid that with the underinvestment in infrastructure, in water and other utility companies, everything seems to be deemed to be a utility, an emergency, and that often clashes with planned works that the council is doing in terms of resurfacing and so on. We have lobbied the government now for many years to give us greater powers to stop the utility companies just turning up, putting up a set of traffic lights, digging a hole, and then disappearing for days on end, which is kind of how it seems to most of us as we travel around the county. And there's been some progress in that the government are setting up a kind of a task group, and the Surrey County Council has been invited to join in with that. There's no doubt that congestion has a significant knock-on effect on economic development and the economy here in Surrey. And we are, I know people don't necessarily think that there is any planning around all this. There's a massive amount of planning, but that planning can be undone by a utility company just turning up and dealing with a water leak. So we have been working. We've set up a group of I think there's 14 or 15 utility companies now in Surrey that we meet with regularly. We have agreed a sort of a protocol with them. And we are looking at the law around the issue of permits. So everything that we possibly can do to try and manage those road interventions, we are doing. But unfortunately, it's we've got broadband, electricity, new housing development. There's all sorts of reasons why the utility companies need to access the services on the highway. But so we are doing what we can. I don't believe, I'm afraid, that any reorganisation of the councils will be a sort of a silver bullet for that. But I'm hoping that we can make a bit more progress during the life of the county council over the next 2 years, with the government's help and support, to give us a greater control over utility companies who are the main cause of the congestion.
Okay, that's good to hear, Tim. Thank you. Nicola, we also had some questions, and again, this is about the proposals put forward to government, and about whether there was any feedback from government about not taking the proposal for the Crawley and Gatwick move into East Surrey forward. I don't know if there's anything you can detail there.
Yeah, so as was outlined earlier, this was put forward by a council within Surrey, but also one within West Sussex. It wasn't then put forward by government to consultation, so they sort of knocked it out at that initial stage. They assessed it against the criteria that I mentioned earlier, and they felt it didn't meet that criteria. And I think part of that was about they wanted to see kind of a coherent picture for both unitary local government, but also the mayoral footprint as well. And having a proposal that just covered part of Surrey and part of West Sussex, it didn't really have that wider coherence to it. So that's the reason it wasn't really taken forward.
Okay, brilliant. And then actually there was a question about the mayoral authority on a Surrey footprint. How likely is this?
So it's absolutely kind of central to our proposals that we are going, as has been said earlier, we're going through this on a fast track programme to unlock devolution on a Surrey footprint, we need to have 2 or more unitary councils to do that. We've got, I think, a really strong case for why the mayor should be on a Surrey footprint. We've talked about kind of contributions into the Exchequer. We really, I think, punch above our weight in terms of when you look at other strategic authority areas, we're sort of might be small in geography, but very mighty in terms of impact. So we've had indicative timelines from government that could see a mayor coming in 2027, and that's what we want to work towards, and feel that we've got a good case for that.
Brilliant, thank you. I've got one final question. So if anyone wants to put, if they've got anything they really want to ask, this is probably the final chance you're going to have to answer it live now in the Q&A. But one of our pre-submitted questions was around national insurance, and I know, talking to businesses across the county over the last year, that this is a big hot topic, and the question is whether the mayor will be able to do anything about national insurance contributions.
No is the answer, I'm afraid. It's a national tax, and that's entirely a matter for the government. There is a broader point around what control local government or local areas should have, and in particular whether there should be, which is what we've been pushing for, financial devolution, so greater ability to control taxes locally, to whether that's to set council tax rates or business rates, and indeed, obviously, in some areas, to introduce a tourist tax and so on. Fiscal devolution is this devolution program from the government will see greater powers and control for local areas, but without fiscal devolution, it doesn't. It's only kind of half of the story. The government at the moment, and there was something in the press yesterday, I think, that the Deputy Prime Minister was calling for the ability for councils to have tourist taxes in suitable areas. But I think the government at the moment are not minded to go down that road. I think they want to control taxation generally. Council tax is a tax. It is a form of tax, and it's clear from the spending review that there is a government expectation that, as I said earlier, that we will optimise our council tax base. But at the moment, I think there is a long journey to get to a point where this government, or indeed any future government, actually does give us real control, or the mayor control over something like national insurance, which we know, certainly the people on this call know just what an impact that has had on the ability to plan and to recruit and so on. And we need to find a way nationally of stopping surprises around taxation, because it's hugely distortive. But at the moment, the mayor won't have any greater powers on fiscal matters than councils do.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much. I wonder if we could have the next slide, please. Okay, so we're nearing the end of our session. So I wanted to thank you all for your time, Nicola and Tim, and for everyone attending and all the questions. And don't forget, you can have a say on LGR via the government consultation, which closes on August the 5th. There are several ways you can keep up to date on this and other topics relating to your business. So you can sign up to the Business Surrey newsletter. You can follow Surrey County Council on our social media accounts. And for all LGR and devolution updates, you can visit the dedicated section on the County Council website, which includes a list of FAQs, which is what we're going to add to today. You can also ask follow-up questions by emailing the email on the screen, which is devolutionandlgr@surreycc.gov.uk. So my colleague Sian has put all the links for all of these in the Q&A function, but we will make sure that we also include them in the post-event email along with a copy of this recording. So we would, as you know, any session like this that's run, we would love to get your feedback on the session. So you can do that by scanning the QR code on the screen, or we will be sending out a feedback form in that email as well. So that just leaves me to say thank you so much again for joining us. We really look forward to seeing you at one of our other events soon. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.